Hey, this is Stephen Platinum with a edition of Every Cloud Has a Platinum Lining. It's number 15. A wrestling fan named Charles Felder, who in the past has been really great, really interested in the Georgia scene and the surrounding states. And is a bit of a pain in the ass, but I don't hold that against him. He is a wrestling fan after all, and he's very devoted to a couple of promotions in particular. Anyway, he messaged me inquiring about wanting to do show reports, which is, I think, really great. I think the more show reports that are out there, the better. That's why I'm putting this out publicly instead of just writing to him or doing a video for just him, which I've done for people in the past. But I think a lot of people can get something out of this, and maybe it will encourage people to do show reports and really good show reports. I found 3 people I really like as examples. So the first picture that you're seeing right there is from a Sacred Ground 7 report from Larry Goodman, because I think it really highlights a lot of what I love about Larry Goodman's reports. And I think it's why people really look forward to reading Larry's reports. And anybody who tells you they don't is lying. Everybody wants Larry to cover their show. They desperately want to read. And the beginning of his reports, which I'm highlighting here, is a big reason why. He's the best, right? Paragraphs, that is important. You don't want just a block of text, right? He gives an overview of his impression of the show, right? He puts everything in a perspective, his own opinions, and context. How does this Sacred Ground stack up with other ones? All of that kind of stuff. And all of the behind-the-scenes scuttlebutt he kind of gets in there too. And he always has a picture that he thinks, he picks his favorite picture that he thinks highlights a particularly important moment in the event. Here we see Johnny Danger bleeding buckets. It's awesome, right? Let's go to the second picture, which is the next part of this report. A lot of this story, Larry always puts the attendance. Put the fucking attendance and just be true about it. I think it's really important. And the names of things are important. What's the name of the venue that you're running in? What's the name of the town that you're in? What's the name of the notables? Right? Get all those things down. He's spitting facts here. What happened and what effect did it have, right? You see it right here. Chapter 7 was running on Lucha Libre time, starting 45 minutes late and ending some 3.5 hours later. So that's a fact that show started late, and that's how long it ran. But he noted here that nobody seemed to mind. It's not enough to just put the facts. You have to put things in context. What effect did it have? Larry just does these things naturally. He has been doing show reports for more than 20 years, right? Something I like that Larry does that not a lot of other people do, if you notice on that match number 1, right? He goes into great description. He puts in the time that the match took, the number of the match, in this case it was the first match, right? And the results right in the beginning. I think that's a great way to do it. Go time Eric Jones won phase 1 of the Platinum Royal over Dementia DeRose, he names all the people in this amount of time, right? And then he goes into phase 2 where Eric Jones has a match with somebody for the second half of the Battle Royal, right? I love that Larry puts the time. Now we're going to go to somebody else. Who do we have here? Scott Hensley, who I wish would write more reports, but I know the dude's busy, and he does write about the shows that he gets to, especially covering shows that most people don't cover, in this case, TWE. I love that often accompanying his reports is a picture of the flyer itself. You just can't go wrong with that when in doubt. I love that Scott Hensley's thing has a really clean look about it. I would suggest doing what he does here, which is separate the match itself from the description of the match. Though I would add the time of the match as Larry does. I think that's really good. Something else I like about Hensley's things, he has details. He has extensive knowledge of the angles. You could just read it right here. So he goes into those details for you. And since Charles Felder is somebody who's a fan of the promotions that he's going to attend, I think he will do that also. And I think the more details you can put in, the more context you can give to things, and the more history, the better it is. Right? I also think Scott Hensley writes in such a way that it flows really nicely. And then lastly, we're going to look at RobRod, who's somebody who got really good at this. And I highlighted the end of this report that he did, I believe in WrestleMerica. I love his final thoughts thing here. I think it's really great. Rob also does a couple of other things that I like. If you look at how he describes this main event, it is if you are there. That's the style that he chooses to do, even more than Larry does or Scott does. RobRod really, like, if you read his thing, it is like a Cliff Notes version of the match, which is definitely a style choice and one that I particularly like. Larry does it to an extent. Scott Hensley does it a little less than the both of them. You can pick the style that you want, but you can see how all three of them work. Something I really like, he puts the time of the match here, and then he also gives it a grade. I think a grading system is actually very valuable, as long as you're being honest about the grading. If you want to use a point system, great. If you want to use a star system, okay. If you want to use a grading system, whatever. I even like at times that RobRod will grade segments themselves, like promos and things that aren't bell-to-bell match. I think all of that works together. So I hope that gives Charles Felder and everybody else a nice framework of how to do these reports. I highly encourage you to do them and to keep these things in mind when doing it, right? Put the number of the match like Larry Goodman does. Put the results of the match as a separate thing highlighted from the description of the match itself. Put the time of the match. Have some kind of grading system so we can contrast and compare. Put as much detail in as far as history and context, and use the beginning of your report to give an overall view of things. Put the attendance, get the names right of the venue and the major players involved, and then I think it's nice to have a final thoughts thing as well, and have a bit of that personal touch like RobRod and Larry and Scott do. All right, well, I hope that helps Charles and anybody else who's thinking of doing this. You can always contact me if you have any additional questions, but please, I encourage you, get out and get writing and send those reports to Larry. And if you ever want to learn from the master, you can always ask Larry himself.